you're the first cyber coordinator. What does that mean, and how have you defined the role?
So my office was created about just a little over 3 years ago now, and it really came out of the efforts at the White House to look at all of our cyber policy, and also to look at our international strategy in cyberspace, recognizing that this issue has become not really a technical issue, but it's become a major issue of economic policy, of national security policy, and of human rights policy, and that there is a significant international component to this. Virtually every international forum around the world is debating these issues. We're at an inflection point in many of those discussions. It's become more of an issue for a lot of bilateral relationships and regional relationships. And it's not, it really has, I think, transcended from being this technical issue to a key policy issue. The idea of creating my office was to try to pull all of these together, to coordinate all of those activities, to up our diplomatic game, and really to engage around the world with partners, both those who agree and didn't agree, on these issues, because it's become such an important issue. Since that happened, first, our office has grown, and we've been working very closely with both our interagency colleagues and the folks within the State Department. But a number of other countries, now about 15, have created similar posts in their foreign ministries around the world, including Germany, the UK, France, Korea, Japan, also China and Russia and others. Internet freedom, the U.S. has been staunch in pushing for and advocating for internet freedom around the world. There's been something called the the Coalition for Freedom Online. Started just a couple of years ago. Now it has 23 countries from around the world. Internet governance, we had the OECD come up with internet policy-making principles a couple of years ago, but more recently, the Net Mundial conference in Brazil was really an affirmation of a lot of the rest of the world, including the global south, that the multi-stakeholder governance system was central to our approach there. We put a real emphasis on capacity building around the world that tries to get the developing world. I mean, it's fine to have the developed world looking at these issues and trying to achieve this overarching goal, but the developing world often is on the fence on these issues. They care about stability, but they care about economic growth and social growth. So we've been reaching out and working with them. We've been doing capacity building, several regional conferences in Africa. We've been working with our partners around the world to do that. We've been working with the Organization of American States to do capacity building in the Western Hemisphere.
To what extent is that sort of the playing field of this great debate about what the internet's going to be?
I think there is this divide, and all of these issues I talked about, they're not insular issues. They're not separate issues that you can carve out from everything else. So when you talk about internet freedom, internet freedom is raised even when people are talking about cybersecurity issues, because some states want to use cybersecurity as a way to curtail your right to criticize your government, for instance. So one of the key debates I think that has arisen is those countries who want more state control of the internet, who believe that states should have the not only primary but often only say in terms of the way the internet develops and is governed. And those states like the US and Europe and Australia and Japan and many, many others who say, no, the way the internet has developed and become such a huge economic and social force and been so innovative is that we were able to do that with not the government calling all the shots. And that's one of the big debates, because you go to a lot of these developing world countries and they care deeply about issues that some of the more repressive regimes are pushing, which is stability. They're worried about stability, they're worried about dissenting speech. But they also care even more about economic development and social development. So that's one of the key, I think, things is showing this is not just good for the developed world. This is good for the developing world and for their futures. And I think we made some progress in doing that.
Mm-hmm. And is that why we win the debate ultimately? I mean, ideals are good, but this is in your economic interest?
I think it's both. I mean, I think the ideals are really important, and they're core values that we promote everywhere we go. But the economic argument clearly, I think, resonates with a lot of countries, because they see that's something that is really core to their development, and they understand that. So we have to couple those together.
Have the Snowden revelations been the toughest part of making that argument? Has that changed now that we're a year out?
The United States is having a real robust debate about surveillance issues. A lot of other countries aren't having that debate. Not just the countries that are repressive, but this is an important debate to have. But we shouldn't focus all of our attention just on that debate and ignore the long-term goals that we're trying to achieve, both here and for the rest of the world, that are going to benefit the rest of the world. And that's having this open internet with security, but not at the expense of openness, and having interoperability and having a real global unified internet instead of a, some people said a splinter net. The thing with the internet is it's globally interconnected, so threats are globally interconnected, and a threat can really can come from any place. And when President Obama gave his speech back in the East Room of the White House back in 2009, he said we face threats that are unprecedented in this area, that threats from everyone from hackers to organized criminal groups to nation states to potentially terrorists. And those could be anywhere in the world, and it's often an asymmetric threat where you don't need a lot of infrastructure to cause a lot of damage because we're such interconnected societies. So the how we respond to that threat requires a lot of different actions, integrated actions. And then also talking about what we can do to build better confidence and transparency. This idea of confidence building measures between frenemies, even, where you're trying to say, okay, we need to have better understanding how we work. We need to be able to avoid misperceptions, miscalculations, and ultimately, inadvertent escalation.
Where would you put China in that group? Is that in the frenemy category?
Well, I mean, China as a challenge because their system, they recently established a new leading group on cybersecurity. President Xi just did that. We've had track 2 discussions with China for some time, and we have recently, although they're been suspended by China right now, had a cyber working group with them where we brought all of our different agencies, military and civilian. They brought their agencies together, and one of the things we discussed was exactly this. How can we build better confidence and transparency? How can we understand simple things like how you're organized? Or, do we want to have a hotline? So building that level of transparency, even if you disagree on some of the larger policy issues, if you can find some practical ways to cooperate on security, on cybersecurity, on cybercrime, that's important. So we've been working toward that.
So looking to the future, 5 or 10 years, the Internet of Things is obvious, but tell me what else there is that the person in your role will be talking about and thinking about.
So one interesting thing came out of there's been a number of meetings in cyberspace. I mean, I've often said, I said just today in the speech that cyber is the new black. Everyone cares about cyber. Everyone's involved in cyber. Every international forum is involved. Everyone's in cyber. I see that increasing in one way, but I also see a different thing happening too, which is it becoming more integrated as a core policy issue. So cyber is not separate, and you don't think of it necessarily separately, because it is this core economic and social and national security issue. We said we're in a lull in this battle of the countries who want to have more state control and the countries who don't. I don't think people who want more state control are going to win that battle. I think that ultimately,
within 10 years, they're not going to win that battle?
No, I think that largely the benefits of cyberspace and the internet are so great that people understand the economic and other dimension, and increasingly, and this is aspirational too, increasingly understand why this multi-stakeholder approach really makes sense.